Hello my dear students. So hope you all are doing well. Thank you so much for joining the discussion today, and well, let me introduce myself first. So this is Harishini Srinivasan here from the Department of Psychology. So hope you all are doing well my dear students. So just before getting started with the discussion, I just wish that everyone is having a good day so far, and yes, please do have a nice day. And starting with the discussion today, the topic of today will be an interesting one which we all love and which we all likely apply in our day-to-day lives. Yes, so we are going to talk about the psychoanalytic approach of personality today. Well, I think we all are familiar with the word called personality, right? Because personality is something which is more in variety and which is more in number across different persons and regions. So the thing always when we try to pair up with another person, or when we try to befriend someone, first we look for the similarities in personalities between both of them, because personality is something which matters a lot, because it tells you how a person is actually, right? So we all know as humans we have that tendency that if we find a similar wavelength, or if we find a thought match with another person, we used to get attached with them very much easily, right? So personality is such a huge and a beautiful concept in psychology, and you know, different psychologists actually came up with different ideologies regarding this personality, and for today we are talking about that one particular approach called the psychoanalytic approach of personality, which is really so famous and most common among all the approaches. So are you all excited to learn about it? Yes, so let's dive into the topic then. I wish we have to be pretty clear about what personality is first of all, because you know, only when we are clear with what is personality, then only we will be able to understand the different approaches in detail, right? Okay, so starting with personality, so we can just divide the words into different terms. Personality, right? So it's nothing but the basic characteristics and behavior of a person which make up that person's unique way of adjusting to life, because you all know we have certain characteristics within us, we have certain behavioral patterns within us, correct? So all of these things mixed up together make up a person's personality. So it basically includes a person's interests, values, abilities and emotional patterns as well. So I think we all have different patterns in our life, right? So when you repeatedly have a thought, it becomes a pattern, correct? And that pattern becomes your action, and that action becomes your behavior. So a person's interests, a person's values, we all have our values, right? Our abilities and all the emotional patterns we have within ourselves make up our personality, right? You all agree with me? Okay, so that characteristic way of thinking, feeling and behaving is what we call as personality. Okay, so this personality embraces your moods. We all have different moods, right? So it embraces your moods, your attitudes and your opinions. We all have different set of opinions towards different context of things, right? Sometimes we might have a positive opinion, sometimes we might have a negative opinion. So this kind of system, your thought generation, your mood, your attitude, this all depends on the type of personality you have. Okay, so then just think, my dear students, what influences your personality? Like what are all the factors which account for the development of your personality? First thing, it's your temperament. So you all know that temperament is nothing but a biological way of interaction, right, with the outside environment, with the external environment. So we all have that biological way of interaction with the people around us, and it is something which we have by birth. So that temperament and your life experiences shape up your personality. Okay, so I just wanted to make this clear for you. And finally, as we all have 5 different fingers in our hands of 5 different lengths, each and every person just like that has his or her own unique personality, right? So not the personality of everybody will be the same, just like how the fingers are different, each and every person will have a different personality, and that is why we meet different kinds of people in our day-to-day life, and we have different kind of relationships with everyone we meet, right? So this is all about personality. So the core concept of personality is that how a person thinks, feels and behaves is what we call as personality. Clear? Perfect. So now moving ahead with the characteristics. So when we wanted to jot down the pointers of what personality is and what are all the key concepts involved in the same. So the first one is consistency. What you have to understand is that, so when a person's personality is developed, it will remain stable for a period of time, because in each and every phase of life we face different things, right? In each and every phase of life we learn different lessons as well. We evolve as we grow, and as our experiences increase we evolve, right? So this personality is something which develops in a stable way. Okay, and after that, uniqueness. So as we all are very special in our own ways, we have our own unique personality. So what you have to understand is that not everybody will have the same personality. People have different ways of thinking, behaving and acting as well. So each and every person has a unique personality, and next, it influences your behavior a lot, right? So your personality, how you think, feel and how you act influences your behavior directly. So what you have to understand is that personality has a direct influence in your behavior, right? And one more important character which you have to understand is that it is psychological and also physiological in nature. So the first thing you have to understand is that like personality arises from both the mental and the biological factors. So say for example, if you are a person who used to read more positive kind of things, positive kind of stories, or you consume content which is positive in nature, obviously you used to have more positive thought patterns, right? And because of this, your personality will be made up of positivity, correct? Right. So this is nothing but the mental factors. So how you have a mentally consumed content influences your personality. And one more major thing is that personality is also something which is biological in nature. It might get inherited, right? So it is hereditary in nature. So it is both physiological and psychologically influenced, right? And after that, one such amazing characteristic of personality is its adaptability. So you know well that this personality is not going to stay the same forever, right? So as I told earlier, when you evolve in your life, when you go through the different developmental stages of life, this personality is something which is highly adaptable. So depending on the needs and demands of the environment in which you live in, your personality will change, right? So it has the character of adaptability. And one more thing is that the personality is something which is an internally organized system, and it has a definite structure, correct? And finally, you have to understand that this personality will directly influence your conscious and unconscious thoughts. So some aspects of your personality are within your awareness, you have a very well detailed view about it, and in some cases even your thoughts are unconscious, you are not aware about them, right? And yes, this particular perspective called personality has a developmental aspect. As I told earlier, personality evolves through genetic influences and experiences, right? So hope you all are clear with the characteristics of personality now and how it's influencing our behavior as well. And moving ahead, so now my dear students, I hope you all have a very good understanding about what is personality. But before going into the psychoanalytic approach, I think we have to know what are all the different approaches of personality which have come so far. So let me name them. So some of them are trait theory, psychodynamic approach, humanistic approach, social cognitive theory, biological approach and psychoanalytic approach, which is going to be the talk of today, right? So these are all the different approaches of personality brought about by different psychologists who gave a very different view about the development and how personality is getting evolved over a time and all of those stuffs, right? So these are all the different approaches of personality, and I hope you are clear with them as well. Shall we move ahead? Okay, thank you. And now moving forward, let me talk about the psychoanalytic approach of personality which we are waiting for. So first of all, we have to know that this beautiful kind of approach was given by whom? And well, it was given by the famous ever all-time favorite psychologist, that is our Sigmund Freud. So this approach was given by Sigmund Freud, which was really going viral among everyone, because trust me, it makes more sense. Okay. So first thing, my dear students, please listen carefully. So this particular approach emphasizes the role of your unconscious mind, which is the master of everything. Okay. So this involves the role of your unconscious mind, your childhood experiences and your innate desires or drives in shaping your personality. So remember well, these three factors shape up your personality according to Freud. What are they? Your unconscious mind, your childhood experiences and your innate drives. Okay. So well, Sigmund Freud beautifully gives a framework of this approach. So he comes up with three major components. Kindly note it down. That's id, ego and superego. So these three superheroes make up your personality. What are they? Id, ego and superego. So what is id? So this id is something which is the primitive part, which is driven by your instant pleasure and instinct. So say for example, you crave for a chocolate and you immediately have your chocolate. What does it give you? It gives you immense pleasure, right? So the id works upon this principle. And now talking about ego. Ego is that one word which is really so common among us, especially the human beings, right? So what's this ego? Let's break the myth now. So this ego is something which is actually the rational part. Okay, so this ego is something which plays the role of a balancer actually. So this ego tries to balance between the id and the superego. So this is a kind of thing which tries to bring up a balance between the id component and the superego component. Okay, so one thing you have to understand is that this ego works upon the principle of reality. Right? It tries to take the circumstances of reality into the mind and it tries to decide upon the situation. So ego works upon the principle of reality. And then after that, the final component, that is superego. So this superego is something which is concerned with morality. You all know, right? We all have a different set of moral values, correct? So this moral part which is being influenced by the society. So you all know, we all have different moral values, like say for example, I have a moral value of I don't steal, right? So where does this come from? It has come from the societal norms, because the society has taught me when I am a child that stealing is bad. One should not do stealing for the profit of oneself, right? So this superego is something which works upon the principle of morality. Okay, so clear? So these three components make up your personality according to Sigmund Freud. That's id, which works upon the pleasure seeking principle, ego, which works upon the reality principle, and superego, which works upon the morality principle. Clear? Easy, right? Okay, so now, wow, can you just see this structure right in front of you? So this is nothing but Sigmund Freud's personality structure. So he just says that the three kinds of the mind, he brings these three things into picture, that's subconscious, unconscious and conscious, right? So you know very well that we all have three different minds. That's the conscious mind in which we operate, right? And we have the subconscious mind which is present in between the conscious and the unconscious, and the undermost layer, the deeper layer of your mind is something but which is your unconscious layer. Fine. So one thing you have to understand is that id is connected with your unconscious mind. Okay, right? And ego, it is connected with your conscious mind. Okay, and superego is connected with your subconscious mind. So what you have to understand is that most of your desires actually come up from your unconscious. So this is what Sigmund Freud tries to force upon us, because like his finding was really so relevant that each and every desire we have, it stems from the unconscious mind. right? So the id, the ego and the superego all function together in shaping up our personality. Okay, clear? So well, I have just given you a detailed picture of what id, ego and superego is. So hope we'll move through this. So id is something which is also known as an instinct, and it works upon the pleasure seeking principle, and it looks for instant gratification. So when we crave for something or when we desire for something, the moment we get that in our hands, we instantly feel so happy, we feel so pleasureful, right? So that is what we call instant gratification. Just imagine you're craving for a chocolate, and in the next 5 minutes you get a chocolate right in front of your hands. Wow, that feels like wow, heaven, right? So that pleasure seeking principle which leads to instant gratification, it is given by your id. Okay, right? So say for example, a hungry baby being fed with food, like it feels like heaven for the baby, and instantly it has got that gratification. So this works on the id principle. And next let's talk about ego. Let's be real, right? Let's be rational. So the ego works upon the reality seeking principle. So this basically develops around 2 to 3 years of age, and this works upon the reality principle, and most probably in case of ego you will use your logic and your reasoning, right? So we all have different complex thinking and reasoning capabilities, right? So you put them into action, and depending upon the reality you choose your actions. So that is what we call as ego. Okay, say for example, you feel hungry but you wait for your lunch time to eat. So you are not just telling it like, no, I want food immediately. You are not looking for that instant gratification. Instead you think about the reality, because you know very well that before the lunch bell hits, no one is going to give you the permission to have your food, right? So the moment the lunch bell goes on, you are allowed to eat your food. So you know the reality that even though I desire, it's not going to happen because the lunch bell isn't hidden yet, right? So when you work upon the reality principle and your behavior is tuned in such a way, then ego comes into action. Interesting, right? And finally we have our superego. So superego is nothing but which works upon the morality principle. So this basically develops around the age of 5 to 6 years, and here you work upon the morality principle, right? So here you put up your values into action, and you put up your internalized and societal and personal values, all kind of values you have within yourself, you put them into action. Okay, so say for example, like you are resisting your temptation, right? Because you feel like you feel like stealing something because that particular thing is really so beautiful, it looks marvelous, it's so pretty, so you feel like stealing it, but you resist that temptation because according to my personal value, I know very well that it's wrong to steal. I should not steal someone else's property, I know that, right? So I resist that temptation. So here I work upon the superego, I work upon the morality principle. So this is what we call as superego. Clear? Okay. So now how does the interaction between id, ego and superego takes place? If there is a healthy relationship, like if all of these three things work in unity, then it leads to a development of a very healthy personality. Okay, and moving ahead, overactive id, like overactive id is something wherein your unconscious mind takes over your conscious mind and you work more upon the pleasure seeking principle. This might also happen. An overactive superego might also happen, wherein you operate only according to your personal values, only according to your moral values. You never take reality into consideration. This might also happen, and a weaker ego can also come up. When you are unable to find the balance between your id and your superego, at that point of time your ego becomes weak. That also might happen. Alright, are you all clear? Fine. So now, next moving ahead, let us talk about the different psychosexual stages of development, because this is also one more major aspect of the psychoanalytic approach. So my dear students, this is really so important. So kindly take a note of it. So moving ahead, we have these 5 stages which is really so important, that is oral stage, anal stage, phallic stage, latency stage and genital stage. So this oral stage is something which happens around 0 to 1 years of age, and you all know what is oral. Yes, your mouth, right? So here your pleasure is more focused upon your mouth. We all love finger sucking and finger biting when we were a child, right? Yes, so that is what we call as oral stage. So when you get fixed in this stage, it can lead to habits like smoking and overeating. So those adults who were in an oral stage fixation during their childhood, they might have this particular habit of smoking and overeating. Okay, and next we have the anal stage, which ranges around 1 to 3 years of age, and here your focus is upon the bladder and the bowel control. So when someone gets fixed in this stage, it can result in either excessive cleanliness or excessive messiness. Both the things can happen. And next we have the phallic stage, which ranges around 3 to 6 years of age, and here your utmost focus is on your genitals. What are your genitals? Your reproductive parts, right? And here you might also develop Oedipus and Electra complex. I hope you all know about this, and these kind of complexes bring a lot of trouble into our life, to be honest. So Oedipus complex is something wherein the sons or the male child of the family will get attracted towards their mother, right? They will be attached more towards their mother because of the opposite sex orientation, right? Whereas in case of Electra complexes, the daughters, the princesses of the house, they will get attracted more towards their fathers because of the opposite sex orientation. So these Oedipus and Electra complexes also develop around the stage of the phallic stage. So when someone gets fixed in this particular phallic stage, it might lead to issues with their authority and in their future relationships as well. Clear? And next we have the latency stage, which ranges around 6 to 12 years of age. Here your sexual impulses take action. They become dominant, and your social and intellectual development also develops more. And the final stage is the genital stage, which develops after 12 years of age. Here your sexual maturity is well developed, and it will give you more and more mature thoughts, more and more responsibilities, and there will be an involvement in your relationships as well. Clear? So these are the 5 most important psychosexual stages of development. Hope you all are clear with the same, my dear children. So what are they? Oral stage, anal stage, phallic stage, latency stage and genital stage. So the fixation in any of these stages will bring up different consequences in different contexts of life, right? Okay, so hope you are clear with the same, and this is just a little pictorial representation of the stages which we have discussed so far. So in the oral stage, it happens from 0 to 1 year, and anal stage it happens from 1 to 3 years, and phallic stage it happens from 3 to 6 years. And genital stage, it happens from puberty to adulthood, right? And like latency stage happens from 6 years to puberty, and finally genital stage happens from puberty and adulthood to so on, right? Clear? And next, one more important aspect of the psychoanalytic approach is the defense mechanisms. This is really so important, my dear students, because we unconsciously do many of these defense mechanisms in our day-to-day daily life, right? So defense mechanisms are something which protect you, like you feel like you are protecting yourself by doing something else. So in order to divert or in order to handle your thoughts and emotions, you get through a way. That is what we call as a defense mechanism. Okay. So the first thing is repression. So here you unconsciously, like you never knew that you were doing it, you unconsciously push your painful thoughts out of your awareness. So you push them out like, no, I'm not ready to engage any of the negative thoughts into my mind. So you unconsciously push those painful thoughts out of your awareness, and that is what we call as repression. And next we have denial. We all know what is denial, right? So you refuse to accept your reality because you feel so painful and you feel so this like you feel so discomfort when you come across the truth, so you never want to hear it. So that is denial. And projection is something wherein you attribute your own unacceptable thoughts or feelings to others. So you are the reason for it, but you project it on someone else. You just turn the plates like that the opposite person is responsible for that, and that is what we call as projection. And next we have displacement. Displacement is something wherein you redirect your emotions from the real source to a safer target who will never question you. So this happens a lot when we really have a very bad day or our mood is ruined. What will we do? We'll go to the person whom we trust the most and we'll just vent out our anger on them, right? And that understanding person will also innocently listen to it and will support you. This happens. Hope you all have a beautiful person like that in your life, right? So when one person redirects the emotion from the real source to a safer target, that is what we call as displacement. And next we have regression. So in regression, what happens is you revert to childlike behavior during stress. You become a child actually. Okay, and next we have rationalization. So in rationalization, you have a very good justifying proof. Like you have many kind of logical facts, but the worrying part is they are all false. So in order to go through that stressful thing, what you do is you justify your behavior with different logics, but at the end of the day, they all are false explanations. So that's what we call as rationalization. And next we have sublimation. So sublimation is something wherein you channel your unacceptable impulses into socially acceptable activities. And next, reaction formation is nothing but you act in exactly the opposite way of one's own true feelings. Say for example, let's say I feel very sad or I feel very bad that something bad happened in my day. But during reaction formation, I oppositely project happiness outside. Inside I'm really so sad, but outside I pretend to be happy. That is what we call as reaction formation. And yes, we also have intellectualization wherein you try to avoid your emotions by taking different facts and logic into consideration. And yes, finally, we are going to end up with compensation. So compensation is when you are really brutally hurted in any area of your life, you overachieve it in another area to make up for the failures you did in another context. So when you failed in your academics, you try to win more and more in your sports. So you lost in academics, but you won in sports. So this is what we call as compensation. So just see how beautifully our mind is manipulating us to go through to the stressful situations. It's trying to protect and regulate your own emotions, and that is what we call as defense mechanisms. And finally, I'd like to just end up the whole concept which we have discussed so far with a case study, so that it will be useful for you to understand them in detail. So let me start. Sigmund Freud, who is a 5-year-old boy, and his name's like when he was a 5-year-old boy, his name was Little Hans, and he developed a phobia of horses. So you all know what's phobia. It's a fear, right? So his father, who was a follower of Freud, provided the detailed observations of Hans' behavior, and Freud analyzed his behavior through the psychoanalytic approach. So moving forward, what are all the symptoms Hans had? So Hans showed a very, very intense fear of horses, especially the horses which had black harnesses. Okay, so he had that fear that the horse might bite him, right? And he also had an immense fascination with his genital area, and he showed more jealousy towards his father. So my dear students, you all have to understand that these are all the symptoms that were exhibited by Hans. So first thing, he had more fear because of the horses, and second, he had the fear that the horses might bite him, and third, he had more jealousy towards his father and was more fascinated with his own genital area. Okay, and now what was Freud's interpretation? What and all he do so far? So Freud's interpretation was, he believed that Hans was experiencing the Oedipus complex, right? Because he in the Oedipus complex, the son will unconsciously desire his mother, and when he unconsciously desires his mother a lot, his father will become as an enemy for the son over time, and this is what happened with Hans. As he was suffering from Oedipus complex, he was developing an immense unconscious desire towards his mother, and over time he started to see his father as his enemy. And the second most important interpretation is the fear of horses symbolized nothing but the fear of his father. So you all know his father would have a mustache because he is a male, right? And he also used to wear glasses, and all of these things made Hans to resemble him like a horse. So he started to connect between the features of the horse and the features of his father, and because of his fear towards his father, it got displaced into the horses, and because of this he was feeling this immense fear feeling towards the horses. And finally, this phobia is also nothing but a displacement, which is nothing but a defense mechanism, because his unconscious fear of his father was transferred into the horses. And what is this defense mechanism called? Very good, I heard it right, that is displacement, right? So this phobia of Hans was also a defense mechanism wherein the unconscious fear of his father got transferred to his horse. So this is all about the case study of Hans, and I hope you all beautifully understood how this psychoanalytic approach of personality is working in case of Hans, right? So with that, I hope the session was really so good and nice. Yes, so this was all the interpretation of Freud, and yes, I hope you all enjoyed the session a lot. So coming with the resolution part, taking into consideration the case study of Hans and Freud's interpretation, Hans overcame this phobia very much easily, and he also concluded that this boy called Hans got stuck up in the phallic stage, which happens around 3 to 6 years of age, right? So because of this issue which happened at this phallic stage, that is 3 to 6 years of age, this particular issue was happening to Hans. So this was the interpretation finally given by Freud. So I hope you all are very clear about the psychoanalytic approach, and with that I wish to conclude the session, and let me give you a beautiful summary of what and all we have discussed so far. So first of all, we started with what is personality. That is a person's unique way of thinking, feeling and acting is known as personality, right? And after that we learnt about the different features of personality as well, and then we learnt about different approaches of personality, that is psychodynamic, psychoanalytic, trait, biological approach and so on. And this psychoanalytic approach was the show stealer, wherein we discussed about the id, ego and the superego. So id works upon the pleasure seeking principle, ego works upon the reality principle, and superego works upon the morality principle. And then we discussed about defense mechanisms in detail. So thank you so much for joining the session. Hope you all are clear with the today's topic. Keep learning, my dear students, and take care and keep learning. And these kind of defense mechanisms, your psychosexual stages of development and your id, ego and superego, so these all are going to play a very major role in your day-to-day daily life, right? So be conscious in which state of mind you are working so far, whether it's your id, your ego or your superego, because this all matters. Id works upon your pleasure seeking principle, so never trust it all the time. Ego is something which tries to balance between the ego, between the superego and the id, so try to keep it alive, and your superego is something which tries to work more upon your morality principle, so also keep it alive. Happy learning, students. Thank you so much.